Picture this. President Andrew Jackson, his face like a thundercloud, right there in the White House. It's the winter of 1832, and he's not angry at some foreign power. No, it's South Carolina, a state within his own nation, threatening to, well, tear it all down.
A really precarious moment. You can just feel the tension. The survival of the Union itself seemed to hang in the balance.
Absolutely. And that dramatic scene, it really sets the stage for what we're exploring today.
Right. We're looking at this pivotal chapter in American history, but specifically through Andrew Jackson's eyes, his personal convictions.
Especially as he faced down this huge challenge, the nullification crisis.
Exactly. We want to understand his unwavering belief in the Union, even when it was under such direct threat. And we're drawing heavily from Jon Meacham's biography, American Lion. It gives some fantastic insights.
Yeah, it really does. And as we kind of unpack this high-stakes situation, it's interesting to think about how we approach history. It reminds me a bit of channels like Mindful Moments on YouTube. You know, they use AI to analyze books, really pushing viewers to reflect and think critically.
That's a great parallel. It's sort of a similar goal to what we're trying to do here, right? Dig into the source material, foster a richer understanding.
Exactly. So to really get Jackson during this crisis, we need to understand how deeply he felt about the Union. It wasn't just politics for him.
Not at all. For Jackson, love of country and his own family history, the memory of his family, they were completely intertwined. He saw America as one great family. That phrase comes up.
And that came from experience, didn't it? Orphaned at 14, losing his mother, his brothers, in the Revolutionary War.
Yeah, I mean, those kinds of experiences, they leave a permanent mark. You can see how that early loss and chaos would fuel this fierce desire for order, for strength, for a united nation.
It makes his own words even more powerful.
Definitely. Think about this quote from a draft of his inaugural address. He wrote, "I feel in the depths of my soul that it is the highest, most sacred, and most irreversible part of my obligation to preserve the union of these states, although it may cost me my life."
Wow. Cost me my life. That's not just rhetoric.
No. It shows you this was core to his very being. The Union wasn't some abstract idea. It was personal. It was vital, forged in struggle.
Okay, so you have this deeply personal commitment from Jackson, and then South Carolina throws down the gauntlet with nullification. What was the spark? What were the actual issues?
Well, the immediate trigger was federal tariffs taxes on imported goods. These were generally designed to help northern industries.
Right, which didn't sit well in the South.
Not at all. The southern economy depended heavily on agriculture, on exports. They felt these tariffs just jacked up the prices of goods they needed to buy, and worse, might lead other countries to put tariffs on their exports, like cotton.
So it becomes an economic fight, but it taps into something deeper.
Exactly. It tapped into this strong belief in state sovereignty, the idea that states had ultimate authority. A radical movement in South Carolina started pushing for nullification, basically, the right for a state to just declare a federal law null and void within its own borders.
And Jackson saw this
as treason, almost. He saw it as a direct attack on the Constitution, on the whole idea of a national union. He believed it was the first step towards secession, towards breaking the country apart, utter collapse.
How did he react personally? I mean, behind closed doors.
Oh, Meacham paints a picture of absolute fury, just white-hot anger. He genuinely believed South Carolina was about to destroy the nation he loved, the nation he'd fought for.
Intense.
Extremely. He even talked privately about arresting the nullification leaders, maybe even hanging them. It shows you how serious he thought the threat was. This wasn't just a policy debate for him. It felt existential.
But he wasn't facing this alone. There were other major players involved, right?
Yep.
Shaping the conflict.
Oh, absolutely. Key figures were in the mix. First, you have John C. Calhoun. And the irony is, he was Jackson's vice president.
Wow, okay. Talk about internal conflict.
Right. Calhoun became the main intellectual force behind nullification. He laid out the arguments, rooted in states' rights, defending the South's position.
And then there were opponents of Jackson, too.
Yes, like Henry Clay. A longtime political rival of Jackson's, Clay often played the role of the great compromiser, trying to find some middle ground, some legislative solution to cool things down.
So a rival, but maybe a necessary one in this crisis?
Potentially. And then there was Francis Preston Blair. He was the editor of the Washington Globe, the main pro-Jackson newspaper, a key advisor shaping public opinion, defending Jackson's stance fiercely.
So you've got the vice president leading the opposition, a rival seeking compromise, and a loyal editor defending the president. It's quite a political battlefield.
It really was, and all clashing over this fundamental question, what is the Union? How strong is the federal government?
Which makes you think about Jackson himself.
Mm.
What was he like as a person navigating this storm?
Complex. Definitely complex. Meacham describes him as commanding, very intuitive, shrewd even, but maybe not the most articulate person. He could fly into a rage, but then also display surprising politeness, real charm.
Is that where the dinner party story comes in?
Yeah.
Before the Battle of New Orleans.
That's the one. It illustrates it perfectly.
Yeah.
The hostess was expecting this rough backwoods general.
Right.
But Jackson shows up, and he's apparently incredibly refined, elegant. Her friends supposedly said he acted like a prince. It just shows he defied easy labels.
A self-made man full of contradictions. And on top of all this political pressure, he was dealing with immense personal tragedy too, wasn't he?
Yes, that's such a critical piece of context. His wife, Rachel, had died very recently, just before this crisis really peaked.
After a brutal election campaign too.
Exactly. They'd both been subjected to vicious personal attacks. Her death was absolutely devastating for him. So you have to imagine him carrying this crushing private grief while facing this public national crisis.
Almost unimaginable. He wrote about it, didn't he?
He did. In a letter to his friend John Coffey, he said, "My mind is so disturbed that I can scarcely write. In short, my dear friend, my heart is nearly broke." It really underscores the personal burden he was under.
So looking beyond the anger, beyond the political fights, what was the positive vision driving him? What was he trying so hard to protect?
It makes you think about peeling back the layers of motivation, like we try to do here, or like those AI analyses on mindful moments try to do with books, getting to the core ideas, encouraging that deeper look.
That's a really good connection, because Jackson's stand wasn't just about stopping nullification. It stemmed from this deep, almost profound belief in the American experiment itself. He saw its potential, its promise.
And the alternative was catastrophe, in his view. He truly grasped the dangers if the nation broke apart. He warned about descending into bloody conflicts with your neighbors and a vile dependence on a foreign power. He saw disunion leading inevitably to weakness and war.
So preserving the Union was about preventing that nightmare scenario.
Exactly. His willingness to confront South Carolina, even risking civil war, which was a very real possibility, was fueled by this positive vision of a strong, united America, a republic that could actually survive and thrive in a world full of monarchies.
He was ready to use force if necessary.
He was preparing for it, organizing federal troops, securing forts, but the immediate conflict, the shooting war, didn't happen right then.
Why not? What eased the immediate tension?
Well, while Jackson stood firm on federal authority, there were also moves towards compromise, partly led by Clay. And even Calhoun, seeing Jackson's determination and perhaps sensing a lack of broad Southern support for immediate confrontation, advised South Carolina to pause.
Wait and see.
Yeah, essentially to wait and see if Congress would modify the tariff laws, which they eventually did to some extent. So the immediate danger passed. South Carolina rescinded its nullification ordinance.
But the underlying issue didn't just vanish.
Not at all. The fundamental questions about states' rights versus federal power, about the nature of the Union itself, those remained deeply contested. The crisis cooled down, but the tensions were still there, simmering beneath the surface, ready to erupt again later. It really set the stage for future conflicts.
So pulling this all together, Jackson's fight against nullification wasn't just political maneuvering.
No, it was intensely personal, rooted in his life story, his losses, his almost sacred view of the Union as this one great family.
And his actions, however controversial some might find them, really highlight just how fragile the young nation was.
Yeah.
And how critical the idea of union was even back then.
Absolutely. Which leads us to something important for you listening to think about. How did those tensions from 1832, 1833, that constant push and pull between states' rights and the need for a strong central government, how do they still echo in American politics today?
That's a powerful question. Are we still grappling with the same fundamental issues Jackson faced? What lessons can we take from that moment about national strength, about potential divisions?
Exactly. What are the enduring strengths and maybe the fault lines that this crisis revealed? Still relevant questions.
Definitely something to ponder. Well, if this exploration has got you thinking, make sure you subscribe so you don't miss our future analyses of pivotal historical moments.
And please share this with friends, family, anyone you think would appreciate getting a deeper perspective on American history.
We've also put a link to Jon Meacham's American Line in the show notes, We really encourage you to check out the source material for yourself.
Yeah, engage with it directly. Keep asking questions. Keep thinking critically about the forces and the figures that have shaped the nation.